in 2022, the province passed the Mi'kmaq Language Act. So, the first of its kind, and this formally recognizes Mi'kmaq as the first language in Nova Scotia. And so that was a really, a big thing, and what came with that is a major responsibility to take action. And so what we did from there, creating opportunities for people to learn Mi'kmaq and to make the language more accessible and more visible every day. So we worked with many partners, in this work. We definitely did not do this alone. Our partners at Mi'kmaq Language and the Mi'kmaq communities, leaders, ancestors, everyone really came together in Mi'kmaq communities to help turn this into a reality. And so now we're seeing it, we're implementing it, and Mi'kmaq Language Day is a part of this.
And of course, it's interesting to know people think in terms of the official languages of Canada being English and French. But as you point out, Nova Scotia has recognized Mi'kmaq as the official first language, and thereby joins the other two as part of our culture, our background, our history. And that in itself is quite spectacular. And that leads us into the conversation of your announcement yesterday, being a Mi'kmaq Language Day. You've come up with a new program called the Mi'kmaq Language Revitalisation Strategy. Do tell.
I think one of the big things one of the big pieces that opportunity provides is the opportunity for folks to realize and to learn even a little bit of Mi'kmaq, through signage or more visible, accessible language work in schools, and how that can enrich our understanding of Canada's history. So the Mi'kmaq Language Day, like you said, is that day now that we have to recognize the importance of Mi'kmaq language and Mi'kmaq community as the province's original language, and that we're celebrating and honoring the resilient Mi'kmaq speakers who have kept the language alive through generations and through so much adversity. So Mi'kmaq Language Day is a part of that language revitalization strategy, like you mentioned, that we co-created with Mi'kmaq partners to help grow the language and have it be more visible in Nova Scotia. So this year is what we would call the soft launch, and with our partners, Mi'kmaq partners, we will see the strategy roll out in schools. So we're starting with Mi'kmaq schools, MK schools, and we hope to see that continue to grow over the coming years. So we've got lots of information. I could talk all day about it. I'm going to try to kind of keep it streamlined, but really the strategy is about more than just preserving the language, though it does hope to accomplish that. It's about strengthening Mi'kmaq identity, culture, ways of knowing. It lays out concrete steps to support the growth and accessibility and sustainability of the language. So what the funding will do and how you'll see this in communities and start to hear about it in communities is all around building capacity, enhancing language programs, creating new learning opportunities, and promote the use of Mi'kmaq in communities, schools, and workplaces. And it's for everyone. We want everyone to feel comfortable trying, learning, and exploring Mi'kmaq language. It's a really beautiful language. If you're familiar, I'm sure you've heard lots, Bill, over your time. If you even just grab one new word, you can say "kwe," you can say "walalin" for thank you. There's so many beautiful words that if you just, start to learn one at a time, all of a sudden, I think you'll be delivering your show in Mi'kmaq before we know it.
Well, it's funny you say that. I was going to say "kwe" to you at first, but I learned "kwe" from an Indigenous leader in New Brunswick who was not Mi'kmaq, and I wasn't sure it was a Mi'kmaq. But "kwe," of course, would be the way to say welcome or hello or hi, how are you, that kind of thing. And I was going to say that, and I held back. But I'll tell you this, I recognize the need to preserve the language. I mean, language is more than a means of communication. It's the actual vehicle of cultural survival, is it not?
Absolutely. I think I really respect your depth of knowledge already. It sounds like you do have a real good understanding that, our language is more than just communication. It's really the heartbeat of our identity. And Indigenous languages, they carry more than just words. They are the essence of our history, our culture, and worldview. And as I'm sure you know, Bill, for too long, Indigenous languages have been under real threat. Historical injustices like residential schools that tried to erase the language. And, revitalization is more than just preserving the language. It's about strengthening Mi'kmaq identity and culture, ways of knowing. It also, acknowledges and responds to calls to justice from the MMIWG report and the Truth and Reconciliation calls to action. So these are just, some pieces of those reports and those actions, and there'll be more. But we're really, it was such a positive day yesterday. I had so many wonderful messages and photos, and people celebrating and coming together, and that's really what it's all about.
Well, you mentioned going back to our cultural history in Canada since the colonization took place and all of the ugliness that brought to your people. And we recognize that. And if we're truly going to get involved in, making up for that in an honest way, we have to accept some of that stuff. And I'd like to have you back someday to talk about that whole question of making up for all that lost time. But let's just stay with the language today because it's the very current item. And you mentioned about me knowing a little bit. I can tell you this. I worked at CIGO Radio in Cape Breton 50 years ago. And one of your cabinet colleagues followed in my footsteps in the news department there. But back then, 50 years ago, we aired a weekly Mi'kmaq program. We brought somebody in from the Indigenous community who would speak Mi'kmaq and did a weekly program. But they were not radio people, of course, so sometimes I had to work as the producer, dealing with the actual recording and the editing and so on. And I would sit there for the course of that program and know absolutely nothing of what he was saying. Nothing. Couldn't make it out. None of the words would mean anything to me at all. And then suddenly, in the middle of a half hour's worth of Mi'kmaq speaking, the word typewriter pops up. And I said to our Mi'kmaq partner at the time, "Why did you say that?" And he said simply, "We don't have a word for that." And it led me to realize that language is alive. We see day after year, new words put into the English language dictionaries and so on. The language grows and changes. Can we possibly make up for lost time on the Mi'kmaq language?
I think it's, you said so much there and so beautifully too. I think that it's good to look, at what is in the realm of the possible. And I think, if we look to the strategy that the Mi'kmaq partners and the province of Nova Scotia had come to together, there's a lot of different measurables in there. There's goals around, 100 new Mi'kmaq speakers, within the first year and growing from there. So I think it's about, really to your point, I was going to say Gwe to start, but I thought maybe not. It's like there's lots of people that feel that way. And I think first it's creating and supporting the environment just to try it. And you'll make mistakes. I make mistakes. We all make mistakes. And we might sound silly sometimes when we do that. But I think that, just the recognition and the effort is a step in the right direction. And I think when we have that intention, like this, this work is moving the needle forward, I think more good things can just continue to come from that. So I think it's all part of the process. And, it's hard to say what the journey will look like, but we're in it now. And I think, to your point, I just want to encourage you, try it. Incorporate that one word that you do know. And all of a sudden, more will compound on that. And same thing in community. We want the kids in communities. We want everyone across Nova Scotia to feel comfortable trying it and maybe messing it up sometimes, but also getting it right a lot too. And I think it's just going to be such a wonderful process to see and be a part of.
Well, it's funny you talk about me learning Mi'kmaq, but it's often been said that English is the toughest language to learn as a second language for people. We have nouns and verbs and adverbs and adjectives and all kinds of things, but the Mi'kmaq language is not like that. I'm led to believe from Gerald Glode, who's a marvelous teacher, historian, a protector of the Mi'kmaq culture, and he told me that the language is really verb-oriented. It's all verbs. And he told a story one time about speaking to an audience standing at a microphone, and his mother was in the audience, and he did his thing, and then he asked her later about what she thought about his presentation, and she was just mesmerized by that thing, and he kept saying, "What thing?" And she said, "That speaks louder thing," meaning the microphone.
I love it.
Because there was no word for microphone again, but there's an example. It's not a noun. It's kind of a verb. It's kind of an activity. That thing that makes you speak louder, the speaks louder thing. And am I right that the Mi'kmaq language is more action oriented?
Oh, absolutely. There's a lot of deeply rooted meaning and storytelling that goes into the words that make up the language. And I definitely would not profess to be a language specialist. I look to elders and experts in the community for that. But even looking at, my favorite word, Msitnogama, meaning all my relations, it's something that has a deeply layered meaning around our connectedness with one another, our connectedness to the earth, all living things, the trees, the earth, animals, plants, the water, and our relations with each other. So it's in one simple word that we can say to one another, Msitnogama, it means so much. So it's a beautifully warm greeting departure. It's very quick, but it means so much. And you string some of those together, and you just have such a beautiful, beautiful language that I'm so glad is being celebrated in this way and being recognized in this way.
Well, for you to say you're glad it's being celebrated, I have a suspicion it means a lot more to you. You're new to politics. You're a young person. Compared to me, everybody's young, but that's another story.
Thank you.
And you've been trying desperately to involve your life in your Mi'kmaq background, and you've been a champion of the cause among youth, among young people for a long time. Now you're the minister responsible for Ulnu. And one wonders then, what does that mean to you with your Indigenous background? What does it mean to you to be in a position to effect change?
Oh my goodness, what a question. I have to, first, thank you for the question. And second, it's bigger than me. It's bigger than this responsibility that I have and that I've been honored with is much, much bigger than me. And I thank, the Premier for honoring me by choosing to put me in this position, and then my constituents in Cole Harbour and my community in Millbrook and all of the youth that I've coached along the way, and everyone that, across Nova Scotia that I've built relationships with and spent time with. It's about Nova Scotians. It's about all of us being good to one another, being kind to one another. And I don't think I can put into words right now what that means to me, because I still get speechless about it. It still takes the words right out of my mouth. I'm a much better listener than I am a speaker. But that's why I feel prepared and grateful to be in this role, is that I feel like I've got, big, broad shoulders. I'm blessed to be very tall. And with that, I feel ready to take on the challenges and, walk with the responsibility of this position and hopefully do a great job for Nova Scotians, because I feel like that's what everybody really deserves in the positions that I hold.
Yeah, it's interesting to me, of course, Canada perhaps has been its own worst enemy for a very, very long time. And of course, the colonists that came and the colonization methods used were abusive and absolutely terrible. But in recent years, we've talked a lot about the word reconciliation. And that has meant initially recognition of the fact that the Indigenous peoples owned the land. They were here first. This was their land. We didn't come in and barter for it or buy it. We just come in and took it. And a lot of Canadians have difficulty dealing with that because they think we're trying to change history or something. But the fact of the matter is that fact is true. This was your forefathers. This was their land. And we came in and took it. And it was never ceded by the Mi'kmaq in Nova Scotia. And to see what's going on today, the recognition takes place at every public meeting. The recognition takes place at people pointing to Indigenous names across the province and so on. And now you, in this position, to bring your language back to life in a bolder way, and not just with the Mi'kmaq people, but with the rest of us as well. This is just a huge turnaround. Now, it didn't come out overnight, but I think some people are just opening their eyes to the facts.
I think you're right on a lot of what you said, and I think it's absolutely profound. To recognize how far things have come, and there's a long way still left to go. But when I was growing up, my father worked with a beautiful artist. She still performs. Her name is Susan Aglukark. She's an Inuit singer from Nunavut.
I know her. We played her songs for an occasion.
Of course you did. Yes, of course you would have. And so she taught me because I asked her the question that you just posed, and she had a beautiful answer. And she just said, "Sure, there's many folks that are still opening their eyes to the realities, but there's also so many incredible people coming up through the system that get it and that really understand." And so she encouraged me to work with the folks, the good people that are the willing, that get it, and as folks meet them where they're at. Folks are at different places in their learning journeys and have had different learnings as they're coming up and being raised. And so meeting people where they're at is, I think, a really important part of this process. But, I'm grateful to stand in a place where many folks have worked and fought so hard to get us to where we are today. So I recognize that.